From failed drug tests to money laundering convictions, Chael Sonnen has had some pretty controversial moments in his career. Let's check out the most controversial Chael Sonnen moments, starting with the failed drug test after UFC 117. Okay, so you guys already know, one of the most controversial things that can happen in any athlete's career is a failed drug test. It was Sonnen's fight against Silva at UFC 117, and in the first 4 rounds, Sonnen was the one that seemed dominant.
Watch for the elbows, that push down elbow. Nice uppercut. He didn't see that coming. Snuck it under the armpit. Pin that right arm down. He's going to hit him with the left. And Anderson knows it. That's why he's trying very hard to control that wrist of Chael Sonnen's.
But everything changed after these 4 rounds, and Silva proved that he's kinda undefeatable.
This is trouble! Can he choke out Chael Sonnen? Chael's in big trouble. Chael's got his legs. He's got his legs across. That's what's. He's down there!
When he won the fight in less than 2 minutes after his comeback.
The undisputed UFC middleweight champion of the world!
But that's just about the fight. What I want to tell you about is what happened after the fight. You see, after the fight was over and Silva was announced as the winner, there was a post-fight drug test conducted. Nothing new. We've seen this happen many times, except for the results. Not only did Sonnen fail the drug test, his results were insane. His testosterone to epitestosterone ratio came out to be 16.9 to 1. For those of you who don't know, the legal ratio between the two is only 4 to 1. As a result of all this, he was given a year-long suspension. But this suspension was shortened and made to be only 6 months after a hearing in December 2010.
They gave me 6 months. Testosterone's not illegal, which we all found out. It's perfectly legal. I followed all the rules as I understood them. And yes, I took it to get an edge. I would never take anything if I didn't think it would help me.
It was found that he had given false testimony at the hearing, and as a result of that, he was given an indefinite suspension. Although, once again, this was lifted again in 2011, and he returned to the UFC soon after. But that's not all that has caused troubles in his career. Yep, I'm talking about the time when he made fun of the Nogueira brothers. Okay, so this one is probably going to rub a lot of people the wrong way, and that's probably exactly what Sonnen wanted. To be honest, it was pretty disrespectful to both these fighters. Okay, let me tell you what exactly happened. Sonnen had just become the #1 contender for the UFC middleweight championship after he defeated Nate Marquardt at UFC 109 back in February 2010. Before this, we hadn't seen much of Sonnen's personality. We only knew him for the kind of fighter he was.
Guard of Chael Sonnen, and Chael's back up to his feet. Landing punches from the clinch.
Nice job by Chael Sonnen.
John Jones is fighting a tight clinch.
But after this one victory, the gloves came off and we got to see who really is Chael Sonnen, and many of us did not like that person. While he was preparing for his fight against Silva at UFC 117 back in August 2010, yep, the same fight I just told you guys about, he tried his best to get on the fighter's nerves, and did a pretty good job at it too. During a Q&A at UFC 115, he decided to come for the fighter in a very disrespectful way by bringing up his mentors. Antonio Ruggiero and Rodrigo Nogueira both are Silva's mentors that he has immense respect for.
Free toy in my Happy Meal. I don't really understand what the big deal is. One of them's a punching bag, and the other one I just ignore. He's really irrelevant, but...
So Sonnen knew in order to get on Silva's nerves, he had to bring the brothers into the picture. He said that getting a black belt from the brothers is like getting a free toy in your Happy Meal. Yikes. Now, those are big words coming from someone who failed a drug test, no? And as if that wasn't enough, let me tell you guys about his money laundering conviction. Now, this happened right after his failed drug test, but something makes me feel like this might have been karma. You know, after he disrespected Silva and his mentors. But that's just my opinion. In 2010, he was convicted of laundering money in a real estate case from back in 2006. Weird how something from 2006 came up right after he said all that. Okay, I'll stop with the karma thing now. Okay, let me tell you more about what exactly happened in this situation. You see, Sonnen had a real estate license in Oregon, which was, by the way, taken away after all this, obviously. According to the Department of Justice, a statement was released which stated that Sonnen admitted to the whole thing. The statement talked about how the fighter admitted that a financial transaction he made was designed to hide the ownership and control of the proceeds of a wire fraud. So after all this, there was nothing left for Sonnen, and he had to plead guilty. After pleading guilty, he ended up with a 24 months probation sentence and a hefty fine of $10,000, along with his license being taken away, of course. Now, let's talk about the time he backhanded Brazilian culture in a build-up to rematch with Anderson Silva.
Oh, yeah, he rocked him! He hurt him! Big shot by
Chael Sonnen! Uppercuts!
I know the previous ones kinda made sense, like there was a reason behind all of them, but this one is just weird, and honestly, pretty offensive. Not sure if he wanted it to go that way, but oh well. Maybe think twice before you speak next time, right? It was back in April 2012 at a UFC 148 pre-fight press conference when he said something that really offended not only Silva, but also every Brazilian that was present there. Honestly, I'll just tell you guys what he said. Speaking at the conference, he talked about his impression of Brazil and how it's a lot like America. He added how he'd go outside as a kid with his friends and talk about the latest tech, medicine, gaming, and also American ingenuity. You know, how kids do. What he said next was the most offensive part. He said, "And I look outside and Anderson and the Brazilian kids are sitting outside playing in the mud." So it was really a lot like it.
As a little kid, I remember going outside, I sit around with my friends, we talk about the latest technology and medicine and gaming and American ingenuity, and I look outside and Anderson and the Brazilian kids are sitting outside playing in the mud.
Not the best thing to say, buddy, but as far as we've learned, Sonnen isn't the best at making good decisions. And another fine example of his bad decision-making is the time when he threatened and discredited Wanderlei Silva before UFC 132. And yet another time he was pretty offensive to the Brazilians, granted that he had a feud with the fighter, but hey, you don't need to bring his ethnicity into it, right? During an interview back in 2011, he not only defamed the fighter, but also threatened him and said some pretty offensive things. He called Wanderlei an immigrant from Brazil and himself a gangster from America, and then continued to ask him if he was sure about wanting to play with him. But that's not even the worst part. He continued his statement in the interview and said some much worse things, telling him how he'll do a home invasion on the fighter and cut the power supply to his house. If you think that's scary, he continued to describe his plan of what he's going to do. He added how he'll come to his house with night vision goggles and climb up his stairs, pick the lock of his room door, and take pictures of Silva in bed with the Nogueira brothers practicing jiu-jitsu. There's so much wrong with just this much of the statement, and that's not even all that he said. Not sure about what you guys think, but something about threatening to invade someone's house publicly and planning to harass them sounds pretty illegal to me. No? But hold on. He said more things about the fighter. Here's what else he said. As if what he had already said about the fighter and his mentors wasn't enough, he went on and on to talk more crap about him. Sonnen said that he'd take the photograph of the fighter and his mentors that he took of them in bed and post it on a website called www.dorksfrombrazil.com. Again, I have no idea why he brings up Brazil every time he talks about Silva, but I'm pretty sure it's not the right thing to do. And at the end of his statement, he called Wanderlei a dummy and said, "That is how you threaten someone." Yikes. I think no one needed all that demonstration, Sonnen. And that was all about some of the most controversial moments from Chael Sonnen's career.